Thank you for joining us today. This is the 49ers Camelot Show, and I'm excited to have you. And I'm really excited about my guest today, the great Matt Barrows of The Athletic. If you haven't followed Matt Barrows on Twitter, make sure that you're doing that because he is one of your go-to guys for 49ers content. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to The Athletic, do that. Matt, how's it going?
It's going very well. Thank you for that nice intro. And I'm sorry I'm not Ronnie Lott or close to the Hall of Fame, but it's got to be a pretty big drop off between guest one and guest two here.
Well, we weren't live with Ronnie.
Okay.
What Matt's talking about is that 49ers Web Zone, we're working on a podcast series for why Roger Craig deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And I just got off with Ronnie Lott. And so I told Matt, no pressure, but you're following a Hall of Famer. So that's where that is. But hey, like I subscribed to The Athletic a few years ago, and I did it mainly because of you. You're a brilliant writer, and really love reading your stuff. My favorite thing that you've ever written, and I think I mentioned this in my initial email to you, this was after Jim Harbaugh was mutually parted from the 49ers and then got the job at Michigan. You wrote a piece, this was before you were with The Athletic, called "Congratulations on the Purchase of Your New Harbaugh." It was the best thing that I've read. I think that it should be required reading in schools. I don't know what is required these days, but that should be one of it. It was like, you're so creative and funny. Do you work on that, or is that just natural?
I remember that coming to me in like the shower. Like it was something that was in the back of your brain, and you have to be totally relaxed in order for it to kind of come to the forefront. But I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but that's my favorite thing that I've written in sports for sure, because there was a creative element to it, and it seemed to hit the right tone for Harbaugh, a guy who you never quite sure who you were talking to. He could be like the warmest, friendliest guy, affectionate, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next day, same guy is cold and distant. So it was interesting covering him and that piece. And it was a short piece, really. It's only like 500 words, at The Athletic. If it's not under 2,000, it's not a real story. I did like that because it was different than what I usually write.
Yeah. Well, what was it like covering Harbaugh? Especially when you compare that or contrast that to covering Kyle Shanahan or some of the other 49ers coaches.
Yeah, I mean, covering Harbaugh was a roller coaster. I mean, it wasn't just Harbaugh, but it was his teams. They made news all the time. Excuse me. Off the field news. I mean, there was a spate there. They were getting arrested for one alcohol related thing after another. Guns, alcohol. Those were the two big themes of these arrests. So it was fun in that he was a real personality. Mm-hmm. And the blue work shirts, the slogans, "Who's got it better than us?" His assistant coaches, Vic Fangio and Greg Roman, were really interesting. So you get to interview the defensive offensive coordinator, and head coach each week. And sometimes, I mean, I remember when Chip Kelly was the head coach, his offensive coordinator really wasn't an offensive coordinator. So he would come in and it'd be like, I really can't answer that. I don't know. You got to ask Chip. So they weren't great stories, but the trio under Harbaugh were all fantastic. So, I mean, a lot to write about. But you're always worried that, if you woke up at, heaven forbid, 7:15 one morning, how much news did I miss? Whereas Shanahan, Lynch are more stable, I would say. Mm-hmm. And they're certainly not talking to national reporters. Like, Mike Nolan was was best buds with Jay Glazer. So
Mm.
as a local reporter, you were always worried who the head coach was talking to that day. Shanahan Lynch certainly know folks, but to their credit, they are pretty circumspect when it comes to that. And for the most part, they're extremely honest too. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a deception league, and nobody has any qualms about lying to a reporter's face so that they can either avoid something controversial or get something out there that benefits them. Shanahan and Lynch don't do that. I just admire that.
Yeah.
Certain honesty, a certain dignity
Right.
to the job that they've used, and they've been successful being honest person. See, you can have success and not be duplicitous.
Yeah. Where Jim Harbaugh wanted to guard every bit of
Oh, yeah.
information that he
He
could.
thought that we were like German spies, trying to figure out which way the subs were going out of Norfolk or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was yeah. There were a few Jim Harbaughs that we were covering basically.
That's funny. So you've been doing this for about 20 years, right? And what would you, if I were to ask, what is your most memorable 49ers press conference? What would that be?
One day, I just said that one designated day is for the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator, and one day, I think it was 2000, early in 2000. It's either 12 or 13, and it wasn't a Jim Harbaugh day. It was, say, a Greg Roman day, and Roman is up at the podium, and we're all gathered, and we're about to ask questions, and Jim Harbaugh comes like striding right down the aisle. And, Roman steps aside and Harbaugh gets up there and he sort of looks cross. I mean, he looks bothered. And he starts out by saying, A.J. Jenkins was a great receiver. And I thought, oh my gosh, something horrible has happened to A.J. Jenkins. He's talking about A.J. Jenkins in the past tense. I thought he was in a car accident. I thought something awful had occurred. And really, it was he just went on to say, A.J. Jenkins was a great receiver at Illinois, and he was a great receiver when he got to us. And he's still a great receiver. And some of the people in this room are going to be really ashamed by what they're writing about A.J. You're going to have to eat your words. And he described us all as I forget what the phrase was. Scribes, pundits, and so-called experts. And we were actually thinking of printing up T-shirts that we were coming in that said scribes, pundits, and so-called experts. He was defending his guy. Right. And that's what Jim Harbaugh did because, frankly, A.J. Jenkins didn't look good in those early camps, and that continued.
Yep.
And I believe A.J. Jenkins left the 49ers having caught one pass. Was it one pass or zero passes?
I was.
It was either one or zero. I can't remember. And I can't remember the guy for whom he was traded. It was the Chiefs failed wide receiver.
Who was that guy? I can't think of his name either.
Like
he didn't do much better.
No,
he caught
wasn't
maybe
much
one
better
pass.
at all. Yeah. Exactly. But that's the one that I will remember. And then, of course, the Jim Tomsula introductory press conference was Fellini-esque. It was theater of the absurd to the point I was sitting next to Matt Maiocco in the audience in the reporters row, and as it was winding down and as everybody was getting up, I said, "Okay, I guess I'll see you here next year at this point." And I was right. He was one and done.
Wow. Yeah. So how is Joan in payroll? Is she doing okay?
I'm not sure I've ever put eyes on Joan in payroll. I think she still works there though.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I those are two memorable ones. When I was thinking about this question and kind of trying to predict which press conference, I thought it was either going to be the Jim Tomsula introductory press conference or the I Want Winners Mike Singletary.
Yes, that was another one. Yeah.
Were you motivated that day or were you terrified? Which?
No, I think that was early in the Singletary regime. And the idea was that this guy was going to come in and kind of weed out all the bad spots on the 49ers. he was going to be the cure to what was ailing them. So at that stage, he kicked Vernon Davis out of the game. I thought that was received very well by the media, certainly by people at home. It was, years later or a season later where it was like, maybe the emperor has no clothes here, because it soon became clear that Singletary was out of his depths from a strategic standpoint, X's and O's. Great leader, great motivator, but if you don't have the X's and O's chops to back that up, it starts to become just a lot of talk. And he would have these long post-practice huddles where, early on it was like, these guys were inching in closer. They wanted to get a piece of it. They were just eating up every motivational thing that Mike Singletary was saying. But over time, those clumps, those huddles got looser and looser and looser to the point where you had guys that were like 50 feet away, just with hands on their hips, just waiting for them to be over. Because I think they got repetitive, and like I said, they weren't seeing anything on the field. So if if Mike Singletary did the right thing and took the necessary steps and got a second bite at the apple, I think he'd have something. I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah. Is he the coach that if there's a coach that you don't want to ask the wrong question to, would he be that one, or would it be Harbaugh? Or certainly we saw at the end of the season that Kyle Shanahan can be in a bad mood as well. But who was that coach that you didn't want to ask the wrong question?
Yeah, I guess I'd go with Harbaugh. And there were certain questions that he just didn't want to answer. I mean, injury questions. I mean, think about what a big part of NFL football day-to-day coverage injuries are. He wouldn't answer them. How's Frank Gore's knee? He had this peeved look. We don't really answer those questions here.
He's working through something.
Yeah, I can't get inside his body, or he's working through something. But and he would confront you. I mean, I guess it would be him, but it became so routine that it wasn't like a big hush over the room when it happened, because it basically happened once a week. So, I mean, and when Shanahan gets, I call it snippy, he just gets kind of curt, and won't give one of his, to his credit, he gets very expansive and revealing answers. That's why he's been great to cover, because I think everybody, I certainly have learned more about this sport since he became the head coach.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, you just got back from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Kyle Shanahan was not there. This is the second year in a row that he wasn't at the Combine. Is that a big deal that he's not there?
No. I mean, they don't pick until the end of the third round. So if they had the number 3 overall pick, I would think it would be a big deal. But I think this is going to become more and more of a trend. These guys reasoning that they and their staffs can do more real work from the office, which is where they were, looking at these prospects on tape. So sort of watching the combine and then kind of reviewing what they look like on the game film. To me, I used to just love going to the combine. That was my thing. I really loved the draft. And, in the early 2000s when I went, I was like a kid in the candy store. I thought it was fantastic. Now I don't want to go. You're put in a pit. It's literally a pit to interview these guys. And it's a bunch of, team reporters yelling, did you visit the Falcons? Did you visit the Buccaneers? You don't really ever learn anything. And then the players have been so coached up on what to say that it all starts to sound really repetitive. So I go to get John Lynch and maybe Adam Peters or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. And then I get out of town real quick, and I'm usually back home to watch the on the field stuff. Which I've found is the most kind of valuable, for me to evaluate these guys. I'm not presuming that I can do that. It's more to get familiar with the names and, okay, this guy's a pass catching tight end. This guy's blocking tight end.
Yeah.
It's more sort of basic level stuff.
Well, the 49ers, as you said, don't have a first or second round pick. They have 3 third round picks. Ease my troubled mind and tell me that they're not going to pick another running back in the third round or a kicker now that Robbie Gould might not be back.
Yeah, David Lombardi and I just put out our build a roster item where you can build your whole roster to get under the cap, and you can draft the 10 players. And I toyed with the idea of not having a veteran kicker on it, but I just can't see the 49ers doing that because it would save $4 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking to finish that 53-man roster, that's valuable money. So I don't think that it happens. I think that they'll kick the tires on these guys. In mine, I ended up having them take Eddie Pinheiro, who's with the Panthers this week and will be a free agent next week. David stuck with Robbie Gould. I think, it's funny because there are a lot of teams that are looking for kickers. There aren't a lot of teams, I don't think, that are looking for the Robbie Gould caliber. I mean, he's 40. He'll be 41 in December. I feel like that's a certain type of team that wants him, a team that really believes that it's going to be, making big kicks in the playoffs. And so when you look at that, there may be 4 teams, the Rams, the Packers, the Cowboys, and the 49ers. The Rams might re-sign Matt Gay. The Packers might re-sign their own kicker. So it comes down really to the 49ers and the Cowboys. So 50-50 proposition at that point.
Okay.
So the bottom line of all that is that I still think that there's a fairly good chance that Robbie Gould comes back.
Okay. That's an interesting take because everything that, and people are basing it off of what he himself has said, but I have wondered if part of that was negotiating, if he's just playing hardball, but certainly that would be great news. Now you mentioned that next week is the start of the free agency period. So Monday begins the legal tampering period. Last season, the 49ers went away from what they normally do, which normally they don't sign the big day one guys. But last season they did when they signed Charvarius Ward. Obviously, they're going to be linked to a lot of guys. They call about everybody. So we expect them to be rumored to sign multiple big name free agents. I mean, they've already been linked to Jesse Bates. But do you actually think that this season they're going to be players for those kinds of guys, or do you think that they're going to kind of go back to what they normally do?
I think it'll probably be the latter. I mean, the lesson from this build a roster thing that we did, there's just not a lot of room, and you have to kind of create as much room as you can just to sign not even the Jesse Bateses of the world, but maybe a defensive lineman who costs $6 million a year, which is fairly low when it comes to quality defensive ends, say. So I have a hard time seeing it happen. Certainly Jesse Bates. I just I don't see that at all. But the defensive line is a spot where they've wanted to concentrate in years past. It was a down year despite Nick Bosa's remarkable season. Overall, they weren't quite as good as they were in 2019.
Yeah,
remember that was the year they had
right.
Bosa, they had D Ford, they had Buckner, they had Armstead. So I don't know if they can ever kind of reach that level, but if they're going to try in free agency, I would expect that be, through a combination of free agency and the draft, that's their main focus. That and, Mike McGlinchey is gone. And what do you do at that spot? I mean, that's a tough one because do you sign Andre Dillard or somebody like that? who's going to still cost, these are offensive tackles. He's still going to cost $6-7 million. And then I think people are going to realize very quickly that the drop off from McGlinchey to Dillard is big.
Yeah.
Or do you just go with Colton McKivitz and you try to draft as high as possible an offensive tackle and have that guy compete? So that to me is going to be really interesting. So defensive line to me is really fascinating. Offensive line, offensive tackle is fascinating. And then what they do with this veteran quarterback. And I think Brock Purdy's surgery on Friday is going to sort of inform their decision there.
So you mentioned how Dillard is a pretty big drop off from McGlinchey. Is McKivitz or Jalen Moore, are they that big of a drop off as well?
We've seen them in such small spurts that I can't say. I know at one point that McKivitz was off the team. They cut him at one point, and then to his credit, he came back and really kind of saw the light and knew what he had to do, and it has been much better since then. But even at that stage, they were like, okay, we think that this guy is a guard moving forward. And there have been some people that have gone through their careers like that, thought of as an NFL guard, but then they are forced to play tackle and they're really good. I mean, I like McKivitz. I don't know Jalen Moore quite as well, but I feel like McKivitz, his strength is that he's unfazed. One of McGlinchey's, I don't want to call it a weakness, but he really would get inside of his head when he would have a bad play. I mean, he's one of these guys who are so responsible that they're so hard on themselves when something bad happens that it can snowball. I think McKivitz is the polar opposite. I think he is very laid back. I'm not saying he's irresponsible, but it's just not a guy who's going to go into the tank if he lets up a sack or a pressure or something like that. Yeah. So I think that they like his disposition there. This is sort of a repeat of his college sequence where they were thinking of him as a guard at West Virginia. He had to come in and stand in for an injured senior and rose to the occasion and ended up becoming a team captain and the best guy on the team, and really kind of helped a new coaching regime through a tough transition. So he's sort of got a bedrock type of, disposition persona about him that I think that they like. The question is, does he have the athleticism, the foot speed to duplicate what McGlinchey did?
What about Jake Brendel? Do you think they bring him back and along with Daniel Brunskill, or you think both of those guys will end up somewhere else?
I mean, it depends on the interest that they receive elsewhere. The Texans just signed a center, Quisenberry. I couldn't tell whether that's good news for the 49ers and Jake Brendel, or whether Quisenberry is sort of like a Brunskill type of guy you want on your team just in case there's an injury. So they could still come in hard after Brendel. I mean, if one of these teams comes in hard after any of the 49ers guys, they're gone.
Yeah.
I just don't think the 49ers can get into bidding wars over anyone. They're like with Jimmie Ward, they're banking on the safety market being soft, and they're probably gonna be right on that because it often is. So once the Jesse Bates of the world are taken, then that market has tended to just flatline, and Ward may find that he's getting equal money to be a nickelback here, and is on a much better defense. And John Lynch is trying to convince him that, you actually touch the ball a lot more often as a nickel cornerback, despite playing 75% of the snaps versus 100% snap safety. So maybe that campaign is starting to get to Jimmie Ward, and he's seeing the light there. I think that would be a really big re-shining if they can get him.
Yeah, that would be huge. Well, you mentioned defensive line, right tackle, veteran quarterback. Are those the holes, the most glaring holes, or is there another hole that you think that they need to fill?
I mean, kicker, obviously. But no, I mean, like linebacker, running back, um, cornerback. I think if they're able to sign Emmanuel Mosley, I think that's you probably want a little bit more reassurance there, but Diamador Lenore did enough. I thought Samuel Womack, showed something as a rookie that you can say, okay, in year two, this guy's going to be that much better. So I think they're good there. I mean, they've the last couple of drafts, they've drafted a lot of cornerbacks. They've drafted a lot of running backs. They've drafted a lot of guards or guys that can play guard or center. They need to develop. But I think that, drafting another guard, you just are adding another youngster to that mix. They also have Jason Poe in the mix too. That they're another guy that they're quite eager to see as far as a year two leap. So I feel like all these positions could be better, but those are the ones that are pretty stable right now.
You mentioned the veteran quarterback. Last season, Brian Griese was hired to coach the quarterbacks. He worked obviously with Jimmy Garoppolo and then two young quarterbacks. How do you gauge? I mean, is there a way to gauge how well he did? It seemed like the quarterbacks performed better than we thought that they would. Each one of, well, Trey Lance didn't really have a chance, but Purdy was better than we thought that he would be. Garoppolo had maybe his best season, maybe not counting those 5 initial games that he played for the 49ers. But do you think that Brian Griese did a good job, or is that still impossible to gauge?
Yeah, it's hard for me to gauge. I mean, as you noted, you can gauge it from how well the quarterbacks did, especially the young quarterbacks who are working the most with these guys. And I'd throw Clay Kubiak into that mix. He's the assistant quarterbacks coach, and he's that group is always together on the field. So yeah, I mean, I think they did a great job. I think that they were scared that Griese might not come back, and I think they were very relieved when he ultimately did. So I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know. If it wasn't working out, I mean, and there was a good chance that it was a bit of a risk. The guy never had coached before,
right?
And coaching is different. I mean, John Lynch went from broadcasting to GM. That's a different animal than going from broadcasting to coaching. Coaching is a grind. It's blue collar stuff. It's up early in the morning. It's repeating the same things all the time. It not quite the glory, I think, of working in the front office, working at the top of the front office. The fact that he's coming back, I think, can only be interpreted as a big W for the 49ers.
Yeah. Do the 49ers still believe in Trey Lance?
Yeah, I think they have to believe in Trey Lance. I mean, he's going to be the guy throughout the spring, throughout the summer, probably throughout September. And the hope is that, all those repetitions, all that opportunity is going to get him going, get him on the roll that everybody thought that he could reach. I mean, he was always about potential. And I know people look at him being drafted 3rd overall and you expect, okay, 3rd overall, all the resources that they gave up to get him, he's got to be good, from jump. But the 49ers never thought that. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve any criticism for this approach, but they thought that, okay, this guy has got all the foundational pieces that we're looking for. He's smart. We like his processing. He's big. He's got a big arm. We like his character. This is what we want. And if we can afford to bring him along slowly, we can turn him into a magnificent quarterback. And they did. And it's still being brought along slowly. And that's the frustration from everybody. But I think that there's an opportunity to hit the accelerator this offseason, and he's ready for it, and he should be healthy. It hasn't been bad play that's torpedoed
Right.
Trey Lance's career. It's been injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main concern in the building, is that this guy's gotten injured a lot. The finger in the preseason of his rookie year, the knee after his first start his rookie year. There may have been another one in practice I've heard about. It wasn't major, but, still kind of things that, you want that arc to be a steady rise.
Right.
It's been jagged to this point. So that's the big concern. My question, and the one that is really going to piss Shanahan off as he's asked this throughout the offseason, is, do you alter your approach with Lance? Do you make him less of a running quarterback to minimize those injury risks? Because the two big ones that he's had, the ankle and the knee, were both on runs.
Right.
And he still thinks that he's playing JMU, and he's going after a 155-pound safety. And really, these guys are 250, and he's not going to win those battles.
Yeah, at 49ers Web Zone, I do during the season a weekly mailbag. When it's the off season, it's a every other week thing. I know that you do one at the Athletic, and so I'm guessing you probably know full well what this is about. But I get so many questions or statements about how Trey Lance is a bust. And I've argued till I'm blue in the face. In fact, in our latest mailbag, which was last week, I said that I feel like I'm in the movie Groundhog Day. It's like the same thing over and over again. There's no way we can call him a bust at this point. But one of the things that concerns me is that at the Combine, John Lynch seemed to talk like the 49ers have already in their mind have made Brock Purdy QB1 if he's healthy. And then he said something to the effect, and I don't have the quote here, but he said something to the effect of what Trey Lance needs is to stay healthy. He needs reps, and we have to figure out a way to get him that playing time. And considering the situation they're in with Brock Purdy, that just struck me like, man, are they really in it? Because I've been one of the ones saying, yes, they still believe in him. But am I reading too much into that, or did you kind of take it in a similar way that maybe they're just so in on Brock Purdy that they're not quite as sold on Trey Lance?
Well, I mean, Purdy has shown it. I mean, he went on a 7-game winning streak. He fought through that oblique injury, and I mean, there was just a lot of impressive things about what Purdy did. I mean, and I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, he would certainly be the number one quarterback going into this offseason. September is going to be interesting because let's say that Trey Lance gets all of the spring reps and all of the preseason game reps, and he's the starter for week 1, and he does well. And he does well in week 2, and the 49ers, unlike the previous 2 seasons, get off to a good start. I mean, what happens when Purdy's 100%? I don't see the 49ers changing horses midstream if they're winning with one quarterback.
Right.
And I think the idea will be, Purdy will get his chances. And when he does, we expect him to, be the Brock Purdy we saw last year. So, I mean, that to me is a really ideal situation for the 49ers. And let's just say Lance starts the whole season, which, as we all know, is probably not going to happen. But if he did, then that's the real question. What do the 49ers do at that point? Because I think they'll still be convinced that they can win with Purdy. They've just won with Lance. And so I think then you get a trade scenario. They deal one of those guys and maybe deal him for quite a bit.
Matt, what do you have going on at the Athletic? I know that you mentioned that you and David had done this build your own roster thing. What else do you have going on?
Yeah, it was build your own roster all week. Today we did our versions, how we would do it. And then I think we'll do one more follow up maybe next week on sort of a lot of the uh, summing up what readers did the most, like the types of guys that they re-signed
Yeah.
or brought in
All right.
free agency and stuff like that. But then it's all going to become free agency next week, and we'll just follow the news. And that starts on Monday with the legal tampering period. That's one of the things that sort of caught my ear is like, wait, how does Robbie Gould know that he's going to get more money from another team? I mean, it would be tampering if
Right.
if he knew that at this point. But that kind of stuff does go on. So that's what next week is going to be about. But down the line, working on a Steve Wilkes profile. I talked to Ron Rivera at the
Oh,
combine.
nice.
Very very close friends, associate of
Mhm.
longtime associate of Wilkes, and I think people are going to really like him. He's just a solid guy, a good leader. People want to play for him. I think that's, the joke when Wilkes was hired was that, the 49ers got a guy who kind of won't touch anything when he comes into the house. And I think that's true. Kyle Shanahan likes the scheme, likes the players, etc. But he also wanted somebody that will inspire them. I mean, that was the real D'Amico Ryans magic. Is that those guys wanted to play for him. They were like brothers. They were like family. And I think Wilkes maybe more as a more of father figure guy, but I think you have the same. At least that's what I'm getting from the folks in Carolina. Is that he was somebody that that team, which is we all know was at the bottom in
Yeah.
week 5. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a team destined not to win another game that year. Fans had abandoned them. They just looked terrible. And he really rallied that team and made them respectable towards the end. And I think that says everything.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully, I know that things are about to get busy for you with free agency ready to start soon. Hopefully, you'll have some time to get away and refresh. Are you into darkness retreats? I hear good things about those.
The more I hear about them, the more the better they sound. Just unplug and not have to stare at a screen all day. That'd be good. It's probably good for your brain.
Yeah, it sounds terrifying to me, but I was a little kid that had a lot of bad dreams, so that's probably why. Matt, thanks so much for joining us, and make sure you follow Matt Barrows on at Matt Barrows on Twitter, and make sure that you go to The Athletic and subscribe, if for no other reason, to watch or to read the work of Matt Barrows because he's great. Matt, again, thanks. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Mark. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.